Okay, we're live. We are live. Good evening, everybody. It's that time again. We have another chat, another Facebook Live chat tonight. I am joined by Amanda, who is a hit zoner, but a lot more than a hit zoner. And to give you, how are you, first of all? How are
I'm
you?
very well, thank you, Stuart.
Good. I'm not surprised one little bit that you coordinate hair and clothing. That is a very Amanda, very Amanda thing to do.
I've got a reputation to live up to, haven't I?
Yeah, exactly. You'd be disappointing a lot of hit zoners if you didn't,
Yeah.
if you didn't match. So, a little bit of background with Amanda. I first met Amanda in July 2017 when she joined Hit Zone, 3.5 years ago. At that point, Amanda had run one marathon, London Marathon, and one of the main reasons we wanted to chat today and share this journey is so many people who know Amanda now, certainly through Hit Zone and through me, know Amanda as Amanda the runner, Amanda the marathon runner, Amanda the long distance runner, Amanda who pretty much turns her hand to any challenge and succeeds. But that hasn't always been the case with Amanda. As you've probably seen from the intro, and we'll talk about this journey, Amanda was once size 22.
Yep.
And
15 stone.
Let's start there. Let's go back to there. So what was your background with health and well-being, with your journey, with your job, all of that kind of stuff?
Okay. So I guess the first thing to say is that as a child, I came from a family that was perfectly normal, size-wise. I've got a tiny sister, in fact, really, really petite. And I guess I was a normal size throughout childhood. And by the time I left school, I was a size 14. So I was maybe, the tubby one in the family, but not particularly big. I wasn't sporty at all as a child. I remember being picked last for netball teams at school. I remember coming last at cross country. And I think the way that PE lessons are at school, they favour team sports and competitiveness. And if the sports that are feature in school PE don't really suit you, it's easy to get really put off. And so I was good at other things at school. And so I started avoiding PE and I would do anything I could to get out of it. Coupled with the fact that I didn't realise it at the time, but I'm actually hypermobile in certain joints, which makes me susceptible to injury. And I've only really discovered that in recent years. And so I do something repetitive and then find that it hurt, I got pain, I struggle to do it. So it really put me off doing anything physical. And I really love food, and I don't have any ability to sort of feed myself on a intuitive basis. I don't really know when to stop. Somebody said to me a few days ago, do you just eat normally now? And I said, well, normal to me is kind of eating a lot very frequently. So I have had to develop systems, which I'll talk about, to get myself the size I am and to maintain that size now. So I left school not really having any physical hobbies. I was into music, crafts, that kind of thing, up and down through university. And then, of course, you start working, and whatever little physical activity you did becomes even less. So in my 20s, I qualified as a chartered management accountant, followed that up with some more professional qualifications, and rose through the ranks at some of the companies I worked for. In 2007, I went to work in Oman. And if ever I needed an excuse to move even less, that was it. It was hot. I was by myself there. My husband was still working in the UK. When I went out, people would sometimes take photographs of me or ask to touch my hair because it was blonde at the time. It was uncomfortably hot most of the year. So it's an excuse. It was obviously an excuse, but that was my excuse at the time for not kind of doing anything active. I went to Toronto in 2010 to work again. Great place to live, great restaurants, Starbucks on the way to work.
I didn't know that exactly those dates. I may have been in Toronto at the same time. I visited for 2 weeks in 2010, and the food there is the selection of food is unbelievable.
Yeah, and I had a better social life in Toronto. I was living in a city centre location. I had access to whatever takeaway, food, drinks I wanted, and I made the most of it. I also had a gym in my apartment building that I went in once in 2 years. So very, very poor. So I guess, at that time, my hobbies revolved around things like jewellery making, going to the theatre, going out to ballet. So I was, I had plenty of hobbies. I wasn't unhappy, but on the nutrition side, the physical fitness side, it was quite poor. And I ate because I like eating, and I didn't have great food choices. I got bigger and bigger. In those kind of adult years, 20s and 30s, I did have a few times where I think, no, I need to lose some weight. I'll join Slimming Club, like Slimming World, Weight Watchers. I've been members of both of those on various occasions. And I did actually manage to lose up to 3 stone at a time. But what I found from those type of slimming clubs, that they didn't really teach me anything about nutrition or food. And if I followed the plan, then I would lose weight. But I wasn't. It wasn't something that I really understood, and I wasn't bought into it for the actual kind of healthy eating, in the long term. So of course, as soon as you stop doing it, the weight comes back on again. Yeah. And I think I did that for the last time when I came back to the UK in 2012. And in 2012, I came back from living in Toronto. I'd had a great time, but I wanted to come back to the UK. When I was looking for the job that I currently do, I work for a wheelchair manufacturer, global wheelchair manufacturer. And when I was looking for that job, the first interview I had was actually in Toronto via video conference, because the company, my old company and my current company, both had an office in Toronto. So I went along to this other company for the video conference interview, and I was actually wearing a suit that I couldn't do up. So I sat there for an hour and a half and was interviewed with jacket that came to kind of here, and I couldn't do the button or the zip up on my trousers. And, I realised that I'd put on weight in Canada, but it still didn't kind of push me to do anything. For my second interview, I flew back to the UK. Well, I flew back to the UK to go to Germany for my second interview. And I went to Marks and Spencer's. I went to Telford Town Centre. The only suit that I could find in the whole of Telford Town Centre was in Marks and Spencer's, and it was a size 22. It was the only choice I had. I had to buy it. It's a kind of a shame I don't have it anymore. So
now I think
you probably could. Yeah, you could certainly chop it up and probably make a second one. Yeah. So I came back to the UK in 2012, and a few weeks after I got back to the UK, I stood on the scales and I saw the number go from 14 stone something to 15 stone. I was wearing a size 22, as I say, and that was the point at which I thought I have to try again. I need to do something about this. And, not really having any other options in my experience, I went back to Slimming World. Over the next 6 months or so, I lost 1.5 stone, which kind of set me in motion.
Yep.
I think the thing that kind of made me decide that I needed to quit Slimming World, again, I wasn't really learning anything, but I'd rush home from work to rush to a class that started at 7 p.m. or whatever in Telford. And I listened to somebody talk about sausages. And I think the message of the night was the best sausage to get is from Iceland, and it's this frozen sausage because it's got X many sins in it. And something inside me said, well, I don't really like sausages, but if I did want a sausage, I don't really want a frozen Iceland sausage. I'd like, a nicer sausage than that. Sorry, Iceland.
It's true. It's true.
So I called it quits with Slimming World, but I'd got that momentum, so I had started losing weight. But actually, this is quite an unusual trigger for somebody starting a healthier lifestyle. But it's a situation which is applicable to a wide range of things. So I actually started bell ringing, and
Yeah.
You've probably never heard of bell ringing as a recipe for weight loss before.
No, it's not something that you see on the list of, right, here's,
No.
there's running, there's cycling, there's gyms, there's personal trainers. You don't see bell ringing on many on many of those.
You don't. And I had done a little bit of bell ringing at university, only for about a year. And to be honest, it takes a long time to get the basics of it. So
Yeah.
I was very inexperienced, and I hadn't touched a bell for 20 years. But I saw this advert. It was for local ringer. I think Coalbrookdale was my local tower at the time. And so I wandered down to Coalbrookdale Church one night, and I quickly kind of got into the whole bell ringing thing. And what I liked about that is it got me out of the house. So at the time I was working really, really, really hard in various jobs that I've had over the years. It wouldn't be unusual to come home at 10 o'clock, midnight, get up early, start working the next day, projects, audits, things to deliver, acquisitions, all that kind of high pressure work, and I use that as an excuse to not really change anything. But by joining bell ringing tower, then it got me out of the house, first of all, one night a week. And when you've made a commitment to other people who are expecting to see you turn up, it creates that accountability. Accountability, one of the words that we use a lot in Hit Zone to move forward with our goals. So it created that accountability. And also bell ringing is physical. You've got to climb up the spiral staircases. You're on your feet. It's not like it's a high intensity sport, but you're moving. Your body's moving. You're using your arms. And you're also using your brain, so it's mathematical. You really need to concentrate, so it's a really great distraction from work and any other kind of stresses that you might have in your life. So I started ringing twice a week, and then I started ringing 3 times a week. And naturally then my weight started to reduce, because I was not sitting around in the evening with my hand, close to the fridge or the cupboard to be able to snack. I was starting to go out maybe at weekends with bell ringing friends to visit other towers and do activities like that. So that was the impetus to make a change. And that momentum, by default, I started eating less and started reducing my snacking and becoming more active, and my weight then reduced. And I guess by about the middle of 2015, I'd lost 4 stone. So
I'm just going to pop a picture up now just to show people. You've seen it on my Facebook today, but when was that? So when was that in this journey? I was living in Canada then. That was taken in Toronto. Cool. So that would have been 2011. So it was just before I got to my biggest. Just before you had to put that suit on. And
yes.
Okay, cool. Just want to share that. I'll stop that sharing now. There we go. So sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so I'd lost 4 stone, and then I couldn't bell ring anymore because I hurt my shoulders, which I now know is due to the hypermobility in my shoulders and the repetitive action of bell ringing. So in the end, I ended up having surgery on my shoulder. So that was kind of an end to my bell ringing. And at the same time, I started dabbling with going to a gym near work. My office is in Brierley Hill, which is about an hour away from Telford. So I joined a gym which I could go to on my way to work. And I'd had a few personal training sessions. I joined a few classes, but I still wasn't really into it, and I wasn't really motivated to work with a personal trainer. So I wasn't kind of fully committed, but it was helping. But I really fancied having a go at running. I'd see people out running if you're driving past them, and I'd always wonder, how do they do it? How do they do it? And why can't I do it?
And now people are probably doing that when they drive past you.
Probably, yeah.
Miles on a Sunday morning or something.
Although at the moment they're mostly running in the opposite direction in case I give them COVID.
Yes, good point. Yes, you've got to be very careful.
I do.
Can I quickly ask a question that, again, we've not really discussed, because I've only known the kind of back end of this journey. Okay, there's been some incredible changes over the last 3.5 years, but the person I know is very driven, very kind of, for what I would say from the outside, certainly very mentally strong with regards to goals, processes, systems, again, which we'll talk about. When you were leading up to kind of this change around the bell ringing time, which I've seen someone comment saying campanology. I didn't know that was the name of
it. Is, yes.
And how did it kind of affect you emotionally and psychologically, being big, being kind of out of shape? Did it get to you emotionally, or was it just that moment when you tried the suit on?
No, I think it did, but not to a degree that made me want enough to change it. So I was quite self-conscious, like at work events. You know, I was working at the finance director level, so I'd have to go to meetings in various countries and, you know, present myself as a professional, a senior professional. And I do think that when you are big, it's difficult to have the confidence to project yourself appropriately in a professional situation. And also there is a tendency for people to overlook you possibly as well, and not perhaps recognize the authority that you have. And whether that's you not projecting the authority or them not seeing it, I don't know. But it didn't affect my career progress, in that I've always been very driven in the workplace. I've always worked very hard. I've got on well in companies and progressed within companies. So but the whole weight and diet thing has been kind of something that I didn't manage to encompass into the other driven aspects of my personality. It's almost like I was driven to eat a lot.
Yes, yeah.
Whereas now I'm driven to improve.
Yeah, and that's the personality trait I see now, not just every session, but in every conversation, every goal you set, every plan you set. So yeah, flipping back forward to, so you kind of, you'd seen some success. You had a kind of gym membership, and I remember you coming when you joined HitZone, you weren't at the start of your journey. You'd had already made quite significant progress.
Yeah.
And so you saw someone running or saw people running and thought,
I'd like to try that. And I tried Couch to 5K. Didn't really work for me. It was maybe progressing a little bit. I got about halfway through, and then one week where there was a big jump to where you were supposed to run for like 20 minutes, and I couldn't manage it. So I stopped doing Couch to 5K, but I did persevere by myself in my own way, mainly on the treadmill in the gym, I have to say. And then when I was up to being able to run sort of 3-4 miles, I got in touch with Wrekin Road Runners, being a local club. And that's quite a pivotal moment for me in the last few years. And joining Wrekin Road Runners opened me up to a whole wide world of not only new friends, but a whole way of life, really. There's all these races that, I was dimly aware of marathons. I knew half-hour marathon was, but that was about it. I didn't really have awareness of how many races there are, what different races there are, how they work, how the running community works. How many medals there are, yes, many of which I have in this house. So, and I think because I am quite target motivated, so, passing accountancy exams, passing other professional exams, running gives you that possibility to set your own targets and achieve what you want to do. And when you run, you're with other people, but you are also running at your own pace and you're only competing against yourself. And, the absolute best thing about being in a running club is that if you go to a race, a local 10K, a half marathon, the people who are fast in your club, who you never run with socially because they run twice the speed as you, literally, they will be there at the end of the race, cheering you on. They've already got their medals around their necks, and the support that you get as a slower runner is just the same as the support that you get as a faster runner. So it really is it's all inclusive, and literally as long as you can shuffle, you're very welcome in running races.
And as Sam says there, who's a fellow Wrekin Road Runner, I think?
He is, yes.
Yeah. Thought running would be a cheap hobby, but no, there's so many races.
No, yeah, of course, theoretically it's cheap. And, you know, in a lockdown situation, joking apart, it's actually one of the few hobbies that you can actually take up at the moment.
We've seen a real, you know, and we'll talk about it later about some of the support you've been giving other hit zoners, same as Sam. Speaks volumes for Wrekin Roadrunners, how generous you guys are with your time and your advice. But we've seen a huge amount of people take up running. And I think that's one of the messages you want to get across, isn't it? That just because you are this lady who has now run a certain number of marathons, it isn't always like that, and it doesn't mean that you have to take up running just to run a marathon.
Not indeed, yes. And with the running, literally all you have to do to start is, if you can go for a walk and then you can break into a little trot for 20 seconds, that's all it has to be at one go. You could go for a walk for a couple of miles, you could spend 20 seconds running, and then the next time you go out, maybe you spend 20 seconds running twice, not 40 seconds all in one go, but, you know, every few minutes you just do 20 seconds running. And that is, it's so incremental, and it's a tiny change that you can make. And a lot of getting fitter is about incremental changes.
Absolutely.
And whilst we're still on the running subject, I could talk about running for, you know, a long time.
I've seen, as soon as we started talking about it, we've had Debbie, we've had David Thornton, we've had Sam, we've had Tracy, we've had David, the impact you've had with running on them.
Yeah, I have to give Debbie a shout out. She's we've run several marathons together. We've run at 5:30 in the morning in the sleet, the snow, the rain, you name it. If we've got an appointment to run, we run.
Yeah, I must admit, you guys do. I see you a lot on social media together in running photos.
Yeah. So with the running, the thing that I cottoned onto, which I've been refining in the last few years, is that there's a guy in the States called Jeff Galloway, who he's in his mid to late 70s now. In his younger days, he was an Olympian. And he developed a run, walk, run method. He's even trademarked the words run, walk, the combination of words run, walk, run. And he's developed this methodology of running, which based on your pace, you run for a set number of seconds or minutes, and then you walk for a set number of seconds, usually 30 seconds. But you don't just do that when you get tired. You do it from the very beginning of your run or your event. And the theory behind that is that it helps pace you, because generally you start out running quickly in a race. You often tail off towards the end as you find it tougher. Your heart rate gets higher as you run. The higher your heart rate gets, you get out of breath, you get tired, and you slow down. And often in a long race, you end up walking. So by walking regularly from the beginning of a run, it gives your heart rate chance to lower. It changes the muscle focus from the ones that you're using when you're running to walking. And I started using that for marathon training. And people kind of shy away from it a little bit, because, you know, if I'm trying to be a runner, why would I walk from the beginning? But if I say that when I run a long distance, I run for 90 seconds and then I walk for 30 seconds, and I repeat that over and over again. And I've run a marathon in 4 hours and 30 minutes and 27 seconds doing that.
Which is an incredible time.
Which is, you know, I'm never going to be a super fast runner, but that's a very respectable time. And, you know, 90 minutes into that event, I was walking for 30 seconds. And so my message to people who are just starting out running is to give that a try. And don't think that walking is something that you shouldn't do when you're running, because it's absolutely normal. And in fact, it's very effective as a technique to help you run further and to help your endurance and your recovery afterwards. I mean, you know that I ran 2 back-to-back marathons on 2 consecutive Sundays in the autumn.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would be able to do that, would have been able to do that without that run walk kind of technique.
And Sandra was just commenting saying run walk has worked for, she's a complete newbie to running and has worked for her. Thanks to you. So yeah, and I think whilst we're talking about running, we may jump around a little bit here, but one of the things again that I find very impressive, I've said this to you, very impressive about you, your journey, where you're at is you're very receptive to coaching. You have a number of coaches across your, even just within the fitness realm, from kind of some of the maybe more mindset stuff we do at Hit Zone through to Pilates and a run coach and more. What I guess what have you got to say about coaching and maybe to anybody out there who's struggling alone to get into something or to get better at something?
I think the benefits of finding a coach, and a coach doesn't have to be a professional. I do work with a number of professionals, but it doesn't have to be a professional. The benefits of working with a coach are twofold, really. First of all, you're benefiting from their experience and their expertise and their qualifications. I looked for a running coach when I wanted to improve my marathon time from the 5 hours 10 that I'd done in Liverpool, and I wanted to beat 5 hours. And I didn't think I could do that just by running more. And similarly with especially Hit Zone, some of the groups that we work in terms of goal setting and making people, encouraging people to achieve those goals, is the accountability. So having a coach means that you've created an obligation, you've created a relationship with that coach, you've created an obligation, an expectation that you've got a task to fulfill. And if you don't fulfill that task or do what you've said you're going to do, you've either got to explain yourself or you've got to kind of stop doing it, because there's no point in having a coach if you're going to speak to them and say, you set me 3 things to do, I didn't do any of them.
And I think people now as well, when you talk, it's interesting you say that again, because one of the things people will always talk about is, qualifications within a coach and experience to me is one of the most important. And it's why I think so many Hit Zoners turn to you for advice with running, because you have got the experience. You have run 8 marathons. You have made a lot of the mistakes. I'm a big believer in we always say, you get better by failing and you get better by making mistakes. But if someone else can make those mistakes for you, it's a lot easier and it's a lot better. And I think that's something that certainly within Hit Zone people, and a little bit as well, and we'll talk about this in a second, is around the nutrition stuff as well. Yes, we've got people with qualifications within nutrition and things, but anecdotal stories and tips are equally as important, because they're very relatable then as well.
Yeah, and I would never kind of profess to be to have any kind of running qualifications. I don't have. I'm not a professional. But what the support that I give to people like Sandra, who I just saw comment, is from my own experience and what I have found. As you say, I have made the mistakes. I mean, even with the run walking, I started off because I didn't have all of the kind of most up-to-date information about the Galloway method. I started off running 2.5 minutes and walking for 30 seconds. And I did that on my first marathon, and I ended up walking a lot more of the second half, even with that walking from the beginning. And it took me 5 hours and 46 minutes. And then, I've done a 4 hours 31 using 90 seconds running and 30 seconds walking, which is theoretically sounds like a lot less running, but for your pace, there is an optimal ratio. So for new runners, typically you only need to run for 15 or 30 seconds and then walk for 30 seconds. And for that kind of pace, it will be the most efficient in getting you progress and getting you.
Daunting is that than thinking I've got to run a distance.
Yeah.
Right, get through this next 30 seconds. Get through then right, I can walk for a bit.
Yeah. And I tell you, in the last few miles of a marathon, all I'm thinking is 90 seconds, run for 90 seconds, then you can have a rest.
Yeah, at 25 miles in, that's probably a very a very good tactic. A very good tactic. So yeah, anyway, so carry on. Yeah,
yes.
we were talking. You were.
So I've become a runner. I very quickly started getting a taste for races, and I did my first marathon, as I say, in 5 hours 46. Very painful affair, I have to say. It was great. It was amazing experience, and yes, I did want to do more. But I also wanted to get faster and fitter because, 5 hours 46 is quite a long time to be on your feet. And I think, well, if I can do the same distance a bit quicker, then it's only going to feel better, isn't it? Which is very true. So I had been working, as I mentioned, with a personal trainer, but I wasn't really bought into it, and I didn't enjoy those sessions. And so I saw adverts for HitZone on Facebook, and having come off the back of a marathon and knowing that I wanted to continue getting fitter, I joined HitZone, and that introduced me to a lot of new friends. But also it fits in really well with work as well, because it takes me, I mean, I've been working at home for the last 10 months, but when I was in the office, it was taking me between an hour and 15, an hour and 30 minutes to get to work, with the sheer volume of traffic in the West Midlands. And it makes it kind of difficult to exercise, and I make it a priority, because the only way that I can do it is to make those early morning slots and make it a priority and make sure I get it in first, because it's easy to get stuck at your desk. I deal with the US, so it's easy to be on the phone to the US at 6 o'clock at night and then think, actually, I'm too tired to go out. So with HitZone, the early morning sessions suited me. In fact, there are loads of people I've never met because they do evenings, and I'm an early bird.
People don't know other than from photos.
So 6:45 a.m. session on my way to work, and that gave me the continued cardiovascular input, using my arms a bit as well, with a post-shoulder injury, post-shoulder surgery. And so I started, I guess that was the first time that I'd enjoyed something other than running on a physical kind of sense. My weight kind of stayed the same, and I guess that's because if you don't change what you eat, you won't change your weight. So you can't really, I know people say you can't out exercise a bad diet, and that's really true. So I was doing plenty of exercise and my weight was stable, but it wasn't really changing. And I was probably size 12 to 14. So not big, but I wanted to get fitter to run faster. And getting fitter to run faster kind of meant losing some weight.
Sorry to interrupt, but it's very interesting. It's a really, really interesting point. I use this a lot with people who are looking at weight loss. Having a weight loss goal, or a getting smaller goal, or a size clothes goal, when it's for a purpose, something, a reason, rather than just, I want to be a size 8, or I want to weigh 10 stone or 8 stone or 12 stone or whatever it is. I guess the motivation must be a lot higher, because you're actually doing it for a reason. You can see tangible improvements at something, whether it was a sport, whether it was whatever it was for.
Absolutely. You definitely, to see tangible improvements, it's so much easier if you've got a goal in mind, and as you say, a tangible one, not an abstract goal of I mean, you could have say a specific dress or pair of jeans that you wanted to fit in. That would work as well. But just setting out to say I want to be a size X doesn't necessarily give you the specificity of the goal that will help you achieve it. So yeah, for me, it was about getting faster and fitter, and also in the people that when you run with friends, they're getting faster as well. So there's a bit of friendly competition there, and you want to keep your running buddies, so that the best running buddies are the ones that run at a similar pace to you. So that was another reason. And with the food, I'd kind of heard about macros and tracking your food, but for me, that was back in even early 2018. That was too complicated. I've never really been a cook. My husband, until recently, has done most of the cooking, and you know, when it's easy to eat the same as your partner. Men have the advantage of generally burning more calories than women, and if you divide everything by 2 and eat half each, then you know the female might put on weight. So, and I wasn't really motivated to kind of do much to actually lose any more weight. And what I started doing with you, and it was your idea, was sending you food photos.
Yes, we had that police, didn't we?
Yeah. And all I had to do was take a photograph of everything I eat and WhatsApp it to you. And in my mind, that made me think twice before I ate things. And yeah, I could have just not photographed the things that were bad or the things that I knew I was eating too much of. But then when I had to tell you how much I weighed and, you know, what the results were, and, you know, you see me a couple of times a week in the studio, then it would be obvious that I was kind of not telling the truth. And that was really effective. And I think I did that for the best part of a year.
Yeah, we did. And I think we tried for a little while to not do it. And it was like, no, we've got to go back.
Yes.
And then, as I say, then, well, you tell the story of it and it then moved on.
Yeah, so it was up and down. So, you know, from when I started running, I didn't just lose loads of weight, and it wasn't linear. Nothing ever is. There were times when I would put on up to a stone at a time, and I can put on a stone, you know, pretty quickly if I take my eye off the ball. But I've always had those goals not too far away, be it the next race, etc. And I've managed to kind of bring myself back on track. And I think that quest for improved running performance is really what's been driving me the most. Back at the end of probably about a year ago, I decided that I wanted to kind of take my fitness to the next level, which would be increasing my strength training. You know, as a runner, you're told a lot, pay attention to your core and do some strength and conditioning. Because when you're out there running for 3, 4, 5 hours, the fatigue that builds up in your body, you end up kind of hunching over, dragging your legs. And so the better all over strength that you've got, the more beneficial that is to you as a runner. So it comes back to my core aims. But also what happens is that with my my joint problems that I've had, progress.
Whilst we're talking, just to show people the journey, I'll show another one in a second. But yeah, the joint, you have this hypermobility, don't you?
And you know, I'm quite prone to running injuries as well. This time last year, I was just coming out of 6 weeks in one of those attractive boot things. Because I had injured my foot whilst running, and that actually turned out to be related to leg length discrepancy and the way that my feet work and my gait and that kind of thing. But I decided about a year ago that I wanted to kind of up the ante in terms of my fitness and improve my strength and my core strength.
Yeah.
And so a year ago, I started working with a personal trainer. That's Leanne from LT Fitness Coaching. And I had already been working with Sarah Gatford, Pilates teacher, for a couple of years. But I've also worked with her on some of her she does 1 week, 2 week programs throughout. She's started doing that in lockdown. Worked with her on those, which cover nutrition as well. And so over the last, I just started doing some strength training, and it finally got to a point about a year ago where, I actually want to do this now. And by then I was down to a size 10, and that alone was more than I ever thought I would get to. And I didn't really want necessarily to get any smaller, but I did want to get stronger. But then so I just started learning how to kind of lift weights and do deadlifting and, you know, use dumbbells and that kind of proper gym stuff. And started enjoying it. And then, you know, lockdown happened and everything closed.
Yes.
And for me, lockdown was quite, it was difficult with work in the initial phase because, you know, across the world, different countries were experiencing the COVID crisis at different rates.
Yes.
So first of all, we had a supply chain in China, then we had our business in Italy and Spain, and then it kind of got to the UK. And my job, my working day became consumed by tracking various impacts of COVID, additional reporting. You know, I know various interesting facts about furlough in a lot of different countries. Yeah. Which I never thought I would be reading up on over the last year.
Until March. Until March. And something on that point, Amanda, I'm interested because again, you've dealt with lockdown as you're going to explain now, very well. You know, you've done really well. And how did you when you know, almost overnight we had that transition from an hour, probably 3 hours in the car, possibly maybe a little bit less, but up to 3 hours in the car every day, to no commute, but pretty much being stuck at home, couldn't go to your strength training, couldn't go to HIIT Zone, you could run. How did you kind of deal? Because a lot of people put weight on, turn to food, etc. Explain how you dealt with that. How did you kind of deal with it emotionally, mentally, physically, etc.?
And I think the first point for me was that because work was quite intense, I had to focus on that first of all. Mm-hmm. And when you have to focus on your work, it kind of, you haven't really got too much energy to worry about, you know, when I've been able to go in my mum and dad's house again, or when I'm going to be able to go on holiday and all of those kind of things. So first and foremost, it's I've got a job to do and I've got to do what the company needs me to do, and be there for my team who look to me to present the right, a positive and a can-do attitude to my team. Mm-hmm. But also the running comes into it, because running was one thing that you could do. And yeah, I had to run by myself for those few weeks when we weren't allowed to run with anybody else.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's easy when you haven't got that, you know, the agreement to meet somebody else. It would be easy to say, actually, I'm not going to run today. But I think when I have set myself a target, I really do try and stick to it. I didn't stop, even though I knew that my races would probably be cancelled, and they were. You know, I decided quite early on that I would do a virtual marathon, and therefore I would make myself a target, and use it as motivation to stick to that.
And I think you use that kind of intrinsic motivation of wanting to do something. And you also, again, and it's something that is so important, is you're very systems, very process kind of driven, in that doing the work behind the scenes is what leads to being able to achieve the glory on a marathon day. You know, we're not talking about winning the marathon or getting the fastest time, but and something, again, you, with this accountability that you did, and I noticed this right from the beginning, is whether it was kind of online Pilates stuff, online yoga that Debbie was doing, HIIT Zone at home sessions, your online PT that had to change from in-person to online.
Yeah.
You were almost making appointments. You were committing, right? You know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning, I'm going to jump on a HIIT Zone at home. I've got Tuesday, I've got this.
Yes.
Thursday, and again, that structure must have been important to
yeah, structure is, yes. Structure is really important to me, and yet lockdown gave me some flexibility as well. So on the flexibility side, obviously I lost my commute, which is great, and in the early months I spent much of that working, but that's kind of leveled off a bit now. And the way that I use that flexibility is, for example, I will quite often start working at like 6:45 in the morning and do 45 minutes of work, and then go out for a run or do HIIT Zone at home session, when it's light, at this time of day, or when it kind of suits me better. I always have to be at work at my desk during core hours, and I'm not one of these people that can really go for a run at lunchtime either. Once I'm working, I'm kind of working for the day, and I don't really get into the lunchtime running thing, and I do prefer morning exercise.
A lot of the runs weekend, aren't they? Previously, especially when you could do those morning runs, not having to go to work. That was
yes. So I have, I've made use of that flexibility a little bit. But one of probably the biggest benefits is that I didn't realise how the restrictions would enable me to focus more on certain things. So yes, I had all the, I continued my Zoom PT, etc., and I managed to get a bit of equipment to use at home just before it sold out of everywhere. But not filling up with petrol very often, so no temptation of a Costa on the way to work at the petrol station, no vending machine at work. I started preparing more of the food at home myself, and I started learning about macros, food tracking my food on MyFitnessPal, and one of the consequences of that is I've dropped that extra kind of 3/4 of a stone to get to a size 8 that I'm at now, and I actually probably feel for the first time ever that there isn't a risk anymore of me going back to that very first photograph of 2011 in Canada, because I think I've learned enough now over the last few years, and it's taken a long time to get to the point where I can be confident that I wouldn't go back to there. But I've learned enough in terms of the science around food and exercise, and I have enough accountability systems in place and relationships with people who are important to me, who will help support me and keep me on the path which I'm currently on.
Yes, and I think something, and we discussed this briefly, and it's something again that's really interesting, is whatever your method is for eating well, and for a lot of people it is MyFitnessPal and tracking. We talked to Hannah last night, and she had a similar kind of thought process behind it. One of the things again that and actually Maggie, who's my mum, who's one of our coaches at HIIT Zone, who you're in the food accountability group, nutrition accountability group with her, one of the things she said that was always very impressive, she always sees as very impressive in the WhatsApp groups, is when you have, I hate calling them a bad day or a bad meal, because it's not, it's just when you have maybe go over your calories, or you have a little slip up, if you want to call it that, you're very good at getting, it doesn't turn into a week of eating terrible food.
No.
And what goes on up here to bring that, because again, it's a struggle that so many people have. One bad meal, bad day, whatever you want to call it, turns into, I'll start on Monday, or I'll start next year, or I'll start next month. How do you bring it back in? What do you kind of tell yourself?
I mean, I weigh myself most days, and I know there's fans of that and there's people who are dead against that. And for me, that gives me the hard evidence of, am I putting weight on or not?
It's a data point, isn't it?
It's a data point, yes.
Oh my gosh, I'm a pound heavier. It's just, right, there's some facts.
And, I've got apps which show me graphs of all of that good stuff, and that motivates me. So if I have, that I'm particularly fond of orange flavored chocolate.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
Those giant orange buttons, they only come in a big bag, and there are approximately 600 or 700 calories in that big bag. And is it possible to divide it up and spread it over several days? Not really. No. And so there are days when I eat a bag of giant chocolate buttons, and as long as I don't do that every day, I know that the systems that I have in place with weighing myself, with seeing those graphs and recognizing that they do sometimes go up, but having the goals in place that I want to run a faster marathon, I want to run an ultra, I want to be able to do a pull-up, Just one pull-up, please, one pull-up.
You'll get there. If I have it, there's nobody I believe in more when you set a goal, Amanda, than you.
And I know that if I continue to eat giant chocolate buttons every day, then I won't be able to do those things. And those things, I've decided that I want to do them. And you know how rich my range of activewear is. Yes. And I've had to invest in smaller activewear, and I really want to be able to continue to wear the things that I've bought. I don't have any work clothes anymore that fit me. But I do have plenty of very brightly coloured leggings. And
you are the current holder of the
yeah, I am.
And no, that will not be taken away from you lightly. I am very proud. Random question for you. World's back to normal. We're allowed out, we can mix, etc. You can only run one more race. What's the dream race for you to run? Is that too hard a question? What's the one that and you can't have run it already?
Okay. So I was entered into the Berlin Marathon. I got a ballot place with Debbie, my running buddy, as a team in last year's Berlin Marathon. And so I have run the Berlin half marathon, but that's not the same as the Berlin Marathon. And I particularly like the city of Berlin because my degree was in German, and I was studying A-level German when the Berlin Wall came down. I've been to Berlin quite a few times, and I absolutely love the German history of Berlin. I love speaking German. And Berlin.
Yeah, you read German.
I read German, yes. So Berlin is my favourite city in the world, and it's been the last year's marathon was cancelled. I'm re-entered into this September's one, and that is the race that I'm looking forward to the most. And if I could only choose one, that would be the one that I want to do.
Yeah, and that makes some more sense now why our super sleuths over our secret agents, myself, you, Sandra, Jodie, Julia, over Christmas were escaping from Berlin, weren't we? With our and again, I think that goes to that's a serious point on that one. How when you get a goal in place, and the goal, okay, it was a bit of fun as such. It was a challenge to solve and a challenge to do, but you didn't let self-isolation even get in the way. That you had to cover miles in order to get further clues, and you were doing more laps around your garden than I think I did, even though I was allowed out.
You did, yes, I did. For those who are confused about this conversation, we a few of us from HIT then got together and we did Operation Bletchley. It was in aid of an army charity, and it involved code breaking, but to earn every code you had to walk 2 miles. And I was self-isolating over Christmas, and the 24 miles that I needed to walk to get all the clues I did round my garden in 5 days. Yes.
But it does, on a serious note, as well as being a great little story, it does show even whatever the goal is, actually having a goal there in front of you can motivate you in any situation.
Yes, and I was motivated to, particularly on that occasion. I didn't want to lose any fitness, and I know in 6 days you're not going to lose any fitness. But having just come off the back of Christmas and eating a bit more, not tracking my food for a week, I wanted to kind of get back into the exercise mentality to make sure that I didn't lose any habits. But most of all, that particular week, I'd been so looking forward to it being my first week off work for a long time and having the luxury of a bit of time to solve those clues. And so I was going to earn those clues. And it wasn't the most fun thing I've ever done, is going round and round the garden. But
no. I remember video calling you, or you video calling me in desperation because we'd left the last few clues to the last day, and I just could not get my head around a train track one. And thankfully you helped. But it also goes to show how important, and this was almost kind of you as the leader in this, of that accountability to a group or to somebody else or to something, in that I couldn't not go out and do my walk and do my miles and do my clues because I had you to let down or Julia to let down. And that might sound like a little bit of a negative connotation, but sometimes we need that driver, like you said about having a coach.
Yes.
You don't want to bring your coach and say, those 3 training runs you asked me to do, I didn't do. And I think that's really important. There's a lot of people here saying, this is motivating me to set some goals. I'm being motivated, so you're having an effect on people. Yeah, Chris Harris says he's known you over 30 years, and you're amazing. That's a long time. And so, yeah, what next? Where now? Where's this journey going to take you?
Yeah, so I have got a number of goals that I've set myself. How many of them will happen this year due to COVID or not, I don't know. But there are a group of 5 of us who are entered into an ultra on the Jurassic Coast, 34 miles of hilliness in the middle of May. Mm-hmm. So we've started training for that. So the Wrekin is my friend.
Yes. Well done, by the way, on your recent achievement.
PB up the Wrekin, yes, thank you. Beat 20 minutes for the first time, getting to the top. That was a lung buster.
Yeah.
So yeah, and ultras are different than marathons. In marathons, when you say you run a marathon, people say how quickly did you run the marathon? And when you've run multiple marathons, naturally you want to improve your time. And ultras are a bit of a different beast because mostly they're off-road. So no, ultras are not comparable with each other because the terrain is completely different. Yeah. It's normal that a lot of that is walking, jogging, run, walking. You walk the hills, you run down the hills, you walk the flats. There's a lot of eating on an ultra. 34 mile. Yeah, you can't. In a 5-hour marathon, you eat gels, like artificial kind of foods. But if you're going to be out all day, you can't really just eat artificial gels. You need to learn to eat real food, which is quite a challenge actually when you're running. Yeah. So it's a different kind of adventure, which I'm looking forward to finding out what that's like. And then I've got strength goals. So throughout lockdown, I have continued training via Zoom with Leanne, and of course, when lockdown's been lifted, I've been back in the studio with her, and I really developed I've managed to overcome some of my hypermobility problems. So where I've had shoulder pain for the last few years, by developing the muscles around my shoulders, it's reduced the tendency of those joints to kind of go where they shouldn't go because my muscles around them are more supported. And I'm careful, to do the exercises that don't kind of exacerbate any old injuries. But I've really developed quite a liking for things like deadlifts, and so I've set myself some goals around that. And then the pull-up, my upper body has been so weak for so many years, and for me, the pull-up is an interesting challenge because it's a bit like starting running all over again. Because I am starting from no pull-up at all, not half a pull-up, no pull-up at all. Yeah. So, I couldn't, a few months ago, I couldn't even hang and without, just dropping to the floor. So I have to start. It's very much like being a new runner and literally starting with that 10 seconds, 20 seconds jog in the middle of a run that I talked about. Yeah. And so every time I think about, am I ever going to be able to do a pull-up? I think, well, there are people that I know who are just starting to run. This is how they feel when they're starting to do something that seems kind of alien. Yeah. And one thing that I guess a message that I would like to leave people with is that if you are trying to change your fitness and get new habits, you have to be prepared for some pain. Yeah. The first time you run, it hurts. When you run further, it hurts. The first time you lift a weight and you get DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, the next day, it's a bit of a shock, and it's quite an alien feeling if you're not used to feeling that discomfort. And also when you're losing weight, if you're sticking to a calorie deficit, it's much as people will tell you, oh, you shouldn't ever feel hungry when you're, watching your, I don't want to say on a diet, but when you're managing food. Let's face it, if you're in a calorific deficit, you're going to feel hungry. And I feel hungry quite a lot, but it's a feeling that you need to get used to.
Yeah, and I think there's all, when we grow, whether it, I mean grow in size, but when we grow anything, when we improve anything, there's always going to be that period of discomfort, as you say. There's always going to be something, because we don't, it's a very, very cliche thing, but if we're in our comfort zone, we don't grow. And by very definition, being out of our comfort zone, there is some pain, whether it's mental pain or physical pain. And actually, I've been asked an interesting question here from Alison, who's a HIIT zoner, about, and I'm assuming this is advice with regards improving running. Improving running, maybe be able to run longer. If you're still watching, Alison, then just explain a little bit more. If you're time poor, which you are time poor with regards running, is it about sacrifice? Is it about what would be your advice in that situation?
I guess it's about deciding if you've got specific targets that you want to start doing, dedicating a time to them that can't be interrupted, so non-negotiable time. And inevitably for me, that tends to be early mornings. And nothing can have crept into your day to interrupt you then. So I do recommend early mornings, getting up that half hour earlier and getting what's important to you done first in the day before you get distracted by anything else. But I think also you do have to make some choices and maybe be a bit self-critical about how much time you spend on certain things, because even that, I am time poor. Some days I have pretty long working days. I still spend too much time on the internet often. I can dawdle in the morning and take too long getting ready. I could have a shower quicker. I could compress some of my leisure time. And one of the things that I have had to do is, because I'm taking more responsibility for nutrition and being more active in preparing food in the house, then I dedicate time at the weekends to preparing food that I didn't used to do. Now, granted, at the moment, I can't go to any races, so I can't disappear all Sunday going to a race. But, in the future, if I want to continue preparing my food in a way that will enable me to meet my goals, I have to put the time into that. And I have to, if I am time poor, I have to decide on other things that I'm not going to do.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that I don't know how formally you do this, but I know it's part of it it's having a plan as well. So knowing that, of course things can get in the way, but having a plan and maybe spending some time on a Sunday saying, right, my runs are going to be this days, or my HIIT zone at homes are going to be here, or I know my strength training is at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, or whatever your things are, having that plan and I think something, maybe a bit of advice I would give with this is there does have to be, I think, with all of our goals, and I know some people have children, some people have jobs, some people have both, some all sorts of things, but there is an element of being a little bit selfish. And what I mean by that is having that time as yours, and then not feeling guilty that you aren't at your desk, or you aren't. It's your time. It's part of your goals, and as such, you've earned it. If I want to maybe say that, I don't know if I've explained that as well as maybe I could. Paul actually says it's made you look a lot younger. So running is obviously the fountain of youth. Is running. We'll have everybody doing it. And guys, just so you know as well, whilst we're here, so Alison and others that are watching the HIIT Zoners, on Monday next week on our Monday night coaching call, Amanda's going to be taking an even kind of deeper dive into this stuff, and maybe a bit more of the technique and things, not just on running, but on her general transformation. So you will get that on Monday, guys, as well. But yeah, I mean, is there anything else? If anyone else has got any questions, please ask away. Is there anything else you want to say or cover? covered a lot.
We have covered a lot, yes. Now, I just want to say, if anybody is locally would like to start running, I'm always up for helping people to run. I do a mixture of runs a week. Some of them are very fast, some of them are very slow. So don't worry about being too slow. There's no such thing as being too slow a runner. So if anybody wants any company running, just let me know. And I would like to say, if anybody, whether it's running, whether it's bell ringing, if it's dancing, maybe just not eating Cadbury's chocolate, but anything active, that if anybody's interested in doing it, give it a go for long enough to give you the opportunity to like it, get over that initial pain, which you'll have, and give yourself, 2-3 months of trying something before you decide that it's too difficult or that you don't really like it, because I am sure that there is something out there that everybody can enjoy and can use to let them reach their goals, whether that's getting fitter, feeling better, or losing weight, because it's not all about weight, obviously, it's about how you feel.
I mean, that was one of the reasons, and he didn't set you up to say that, by the way. It was one of the reasons why the minimum, and people often ask me this, why is the minimum you can join HitZone for is 3 months, 90 days? And that's because I'm a firm believer that you can't just make a profound change to your life, to your fitness, to your energy, whatever it is you're looking at, in a week or in 2 weeks or in a 10-day something. You've got to, as you've shown with your running, with your strength, it's not just been, I'm going to go and try a deadlift once, and if I'm not good at it, I'm not going to do it. It's, I'm going to just keep it. And there might be some things that you just end up not being very good at and you don't enjoy.
Yes, of course.
Give it some time and give it some proper strategy. It's very difficult to ever stick to something.
And, if you go out for a run one day and you don't go out for a run for another 3 weeks, you can't expect to get any better. And then you don't go out for another run for another month. That's fine if that's what you choose to do, but you won't get into the habit and you won't see any changes unless you are consistent.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, thank you very much. Thank you to people watching and for commenting. There's been a lot of people who are very inspired, which is kind of the reason we wanted to do this. Was yours is an inspirational story. I'm excited to be part of and follow and see your journey continue. The sky's the limit. Sandra said thank you. Michelle has really enjoyed this. Sharon Owen said you're an inspiration. So a lot of love for you. Yeah, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this. And we'll share more of Amanda's story when after the ultra. Maybe that might be an interesting chat to have about.
Yeah.
If it goes ahead, please
go ahead. Well, thank you to you, Stuart, for doing these kind of interviews, because I've been watching your other interviews that you've done. They've all been really interesting, and I think people can take something from lots of different people's stories. So it's been really good, and thanks to everybody who's commented during the interview as well.
Yeah, I enjoy them. It gives me something to do on these long days at home. But I've actually learned some stuff there. Even though I had a page of notes to look at and things, I've learned some interesting stuff there. So thank you, guys. We're going to say goodbye. HitZoners, 8:15 next Monday. We'll be talking to Amanda again, and catch you all soon.